Musk, DOGE. Perhaps you've heard of it.
I think we can do at least $2 trillion.
Yeah!
If we don't do this, America will go bankrupt.
And I think that's what we're seeing with Musk's behaviour with DOGE right now. Slash this department, sack these meteorologists, cut the spending drastically, and then we'll see how it goes on the other side.
Even now, his new startup is a USA, right? He's basically trying to fix it like he would fix one of his startups. Creating anything great requires 0 to 1, and that means you go back to 0.
If that doesn't work, you can't roll a new American economy out of the factory with the revised specifications from what you learned from your last mistake. You've got to live with the one you've got, which you've damaged in some way, and it may be irreparable. You can't iteratively redesign an economy in the way you can iteratively redesign a rocket.
The influential contrarian economist Steve Keen.
Brilliant economist that criticizes much of modern economics.
He is someone that each and every one of us has to listen to, whether we agree or disagree.
Here's Steve Keen.
Now, iterative design works because you have a concept, you test it out in software, you build a prototype, you then try the prototype, and it blows up. But when it blows up, you've got a factory that can produce the next prototype. You learn from the mistakes you've made. The next one comes out, which is better than the one beforehand, and you continue iterating forward.
I tried very hard to get the right expertise in for SpaceX. I tried hard to find a great chief engineer for the rocket, but the good chief engineers wouldn't join, and the bad ones, well, there was no point in hiring them. So I ended up being chief engineer of the rocket. So if I could have found somebody better, then we would have maybe had less than 3 failures.
I'm a critic of how Musk is approaching the task of reforming the government sector, but I'm far from a critic of how he's handled rocket design. Now, of course, the last couple of attempts by SpaceX to launch its Starship have failed, and the boost has come back to the tower 3 times in a row. It's been caught the 3 times they've attempted. That's remarkable. But the last 2 attempts with the Starship itself, it blew up. That's okay. You go back to the factory, you look at the wreckage, you look at the data you've got from the experiment, you see what needs to be changed, you change that, and ultimately you'll get to the point where you can fly it every time, and it'll be as reliable as we used to regard airline flight until the most recent experiences with Boeing. So that's the right way to go about it. Whereas if you spend all your time waiting until you've finally got a design which you're 99.99% sure is going to do everything you wish it to do the very first time, you take forever to build the design. And that we've seen that with Bezos. He's finally got Blue Origin working. The second stage blew up like Musk's second stage did as well in his most recent attempt, but he got it to orbit. He brought it back to landing. This is a very slow way of doing it. Now, that's fine for rockets. I'm definitely in favour of Musk's approach for rockets over Bezos's. But what happens when you start behaving the same way with the economy? And I think that's what we're seeing with Musk's behaviour with DOGE right now. Slash this department, sack these meteorologists, cut the spending drastically, and then we'll see how it goes on the other side. If that doesn't work, you can't roll a new American economy out of the factory with the revised specifications from what you learned from your last mistake. You've got to live with the one you've got, which you've damaged in some way, and it may be irreparable. You don't know. You don't want to find out the hard way. That's why you take so long with the old NASA approach with rockets. Musk has now revolutionized that. But he can't pump a new American economy out of a factory if the old one crashes. And I want to show the main fear that I have of that with Musk's behaviour at the moment, and with what Trump is trying to do as well. By eliminating the deficit, what do they do to the overall integrity of the system? So I built a model of the economy working from first principles, from actually deriving the relationships from the actual macroeconomic definitions of the employment rate, the wages share of GDP, the private debt ratio, government spending, and price formation. And that's the model there. It's not particularly complicated as differential equation models go, but it does include all the feedbacks which are left out of conventional economics and how they analyse the relationship of the government spending to the, for example, private debt. They don't do that because they don't include private debt in their models. I do, and which turns up in the model for the rate of growth of debt to cause deflation, which then leads to a collapse of the economy. And that's what caused the Great Depression. So this is the model, the flowchart version of the model. I'll just reset it and start from 0 and go to the initial model with government spending, with prices, with private debt included, and nonlinear behavioural relations as well. And I simulate that, and you'll see that it appears to be stabilising. It is, in fact, stabilising. but it stabilizes with a very high level of both private debt and a very high level of the deficit, roughly 10% of GDP, which is a lot higher than the American deficit right now, which is 6%, but it's close to what the Chinese have been doing for the last 40 years. So maybe there's something to be learnt from that. But anyway, you look at this, you go, oh my God, that deficit is too high. So let's just turn off government spending. That'll obviously make the system work better because we all know the government does things less well than the private sector. So we turn off government spending. And we suddenly notice the inflation rate, which was negative to begin with, -1%, is now going -2, -3, -4. The debt ratio is increasing because deflation increases the debt level. That's leading to zero investment, so employment collapses. Economic growth goes down to -5% per annum and below. You've screwed your economy. Now, how do you restart it? In the simulation, I can try doing it by hitting the system back on again, but the crash has been so complete, there's nothing to revive from. Now, I'm not saying we're going to get to that sort of situation from what Musk is doing, but clearly the philosophy that he learnt from the way he designs rockets is inappropriate when you bring it to government spending and the entire economy, because there's only one economy. You can't churn out another one out of a factory that makes economies. The factories are part of the economy. So, for God's sake, stop stuffing around without simulating the economy fully and realistically before you start making the changes, and make them gradually. Don't go in with a heavy hand like you're doing right now.
Hundreds of federal NOAA employees on probationary status were fired yesterday. This includes some meteorologists who forecast in National Weather Service offices across the country. It's a part of the Trump administration's effort to shrink the size of the federal government and balance the budget. NOAA stands for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It oversees the NWS, which provides data, forecasts, weather warnings, and more.
I think I've heard figures of 700 meteorologists being sacked from NOAA. You might need them in the future. How do you get them back?
Former workers at USAID spoke out against the cuts at a rally yesterday.
What is being done is one of the biggest blunders in American foreign policy history. It is one that generations of Americans will look back on with horror.
You might need them in the future. How do you get them back? What if they get those other jobs you think they should be doing, and suddenly you find you need the forecasting? Or, if you get into this situation, what if you trigger a debt deflation? How do you stop it? You can't iteratively redesign an economy in the way you can iteratively redesign a rocket. When I was in Texas to be interviewed by Lex Friedman 3 years ago, I also went down to Boca Chica to take a look at the SpaceX factory at that stage. And this little video clip here shows that I completely supported the way that Musk was approaching rocket design versus the way that Bezos was doing it.
Oh, it's quite crazy to think that SpaceX went from I think they call it the flying water tank or a flying wing silo, to the booster behind of a launch power in a matter of less than 3 years. It's quite incredible. It only takes us 15 years to go from a design to a prototype, and we're watching Bezos and co taking just the same without the excuse of government slowing them down. But it's an incredible rate of progress by SpaceX.
That is an extremely...
It's our snakebot charger.
That really looks like the thing that jacks into the back of Neo's head in The Matrix.
Right.
All right? Is that thing going to attack me in my sleep?
I wouldn't, for the prototype at least, I would recommend not dropping anything when you're near it.
Why do we want to go to Mars? It's uninhabitable.
It's very inhospitable, that's true.
It is. Like, you have to be in, like, domes and everything, and you're just breathing.
Initially domes. Yes.
Really? How long before we could turn Mars into someplace where we could live? How would you do that?
You'd warm it up. Just warm it up. If you
with a blanket or with what? How would you warm Mars up on?
There's the fast way and the slow way.
Okay. Give me the fast way.
The fast way is drop thermonuclear weapons over the poles.
You're a supervillain. That's what a supervillain does.
Yeah.
If you're like many other truth seekers and want to learn 50 years of real economics from me in only 7 weeks, you'll love my new 7-week Rebel Economist Challenge as well. To apply, go to apply.stevekeenfree.com. If you qualify, you can attend my lectures, ask me questions personally every week, and make friends with a great group of like-minded people. So again, like many others, go to apply.stevekanefree.com to apply as well for the 7-week Rebel Economist Challenge. Good luck.